look at what they're doing with Yemen as a perfect example of military buffoonery. The United States has spent at least $1 billion, according to CNN. Corporate media is catching up on this. $1 billion in just a few weeks in restarting their assault on Yemen. Operation Rough Rider. It was named by Pete Hegseth after the colonial fanatic Theodore Roosevelt, I guess. That's my only guess. $1 billion. U.S. munition supplies are being depleted, which is worrying Taiwan. They're supposed to be used to threaten China. And they have achieved no freedom of navigation. According to U.S. intelligence sources who are talking to the media, the most they've taken out is mid-level Houthi or Ansar Allah leaders. They're not achieving anything. They blew up a historic ancient fortress above Sana'a the other day because they're just so short on targets. They blew up a tribal gathering, a majlis of tribal elders, and then told everyone that they were meeting to plan the war. Yeah, we're just going to go with drones hovering over our head during a war. We're all going to go out in a field and stand in a circle, and that's how we're going to meet to plan the war because we're that primitive. The only people who were primitive in this scenario are the Trump cultists who actually believed what Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth told them about that bombing. What that bombing was collateral murder, but we didn't need WikiLeaks to show it to us. We just needed to go to Trump and Pete Hegseth's X accounts. That's how depraved this administration is, but also failed. And Aaron, it looks like they're talking about a ground invasion of Yemen.
There was a report on CNN that, yeah, there's talk of a ground invasion of Yemen. They didn't say with which troops. Like, are they really going to send U.S. troops to Yemen? Or are they talking about using like a proxy force from Saudi Arabia or another Gulf monarchy?
Yeah.
That's not clear. But yeah.
Didn't they already try that?
Well, I mean, Saudi Arabia's invasion was mostly from the air, right? Which was U.S. supported. I don't think there were that many ground troops. There were mercenaries on the ground. I don't think there are that many ground troops. And that's the thing. You're not going to defeat Ansar Allah unless you actually have like a full-on ground invasion. And certainly the Saudis, like however many they sent, mercenaries or otherwise, they tried that for 10 years. Last month was the 10th anniversary of the U.S.-backed Saudi attack on Yemen, and that didn't succeed.
Well, they don't have any men in Saudi Arabia who are going to fight Ansar Allah. They had to recruit mercenaries from Sudan because they just don't have any men. And those guys got wasted in the field. So the U.S. is just offering air support. Maybe they'll bring in some A-10s and try to strafe Houthis and as they arrive in technicals. I don't know what they're going to do. Will they get enough like close Apache helicopter support? I don't know what they're offering them, but there already was a war where the US and UK were supplying air power, just not doing it as directly as they're promising now. But on the ground, the Saudi and Emirati forces were just mercenaries who got smashed like rotten cantaloupes. So,
I mean, like the problem is like the U.S. and Israel just can't negotiate with everyone because they view everyone else as subhuman, and especially people who resist their aggression. They can't be negotiated with because you can't legitimate anyone who dares to resist your aggression. So when Adam Bowler, the Trump hostage envoy, was negotiating with Hamas and called them nice guys and said that the U.S. not an agent of Israel, he had to go because he put Hamas on a somewhat equal footing as the U.S. and Israel. And he even said, we're not an agent of Israel, which you're not allowed to say. And even back when John Kerry under Obama, when he worked out some deal to cooperate with Russia and Syria against ISIS and other sectarian, insurgents, that deal lasted, I don't know, like a few days or a few weeks, because immediately the U.S., elements of the Pentagon that didn't want to deal with Russia and didn't want to deal with Syria because they wanted to continue regime change, they bombed a Syrian military convoy and blew up that agreement. So it just anyone who tries to negotiate, and of course, Obama
They
had the Iran.
they
Obama had the
bombed
Iran.
them. They
Hmm.
bombed them outside Deir ez-Zor, where they were protecting the city from ISIS. So they
There you
allowed
go.
ISIS to take a mountain.
Yeah, yeah. And then, Obama, even when he negotiated the Iran deal, he didn't fully implement it himself, even though it was his deal. And they talked about how basically it was expendable, that uh, they weren't necessarily going to respect it. And of course, what did Trump do when he came in office? He just tore it up anyway. And Joe Biden, when he had the opportunity to restore the Iran nuclear deal, which was negotiated by the administration he was in, he continued the Trump policy of maximum pressure, which means economic strangulation of Iranian citizens. And of course, what happened when Russia tried to negotiate and tried to get Biden to pressure Ukraine to implement the Minsk Accords? Biden just said, no, let's have a proxy war. So all these people are just reflexively hostile to negotiating, especially with people who dare to resist militarily with armed force, which is supposed to be the monopoly of the U.S. and Israel. And so that's why all these agreements are just, they're impossible to reach, because the U.S. just can't see anybody as an equal.
And the US system is erratic and unstable. One administration makes a deal, 4 years later, some maniac comes in and rips it up. How can you trust them? Just ask Red Cloud if you can trust the American authorities. So it looks like they only understand force, which is why this war is taking place, why the Houthis took up arms.